Erin Wiley Sands. I really enjoy talking to Erin. She's an author, she's an actor. She has a very interesting process. She's gone through some tragedy. She started journaling. She ended up writing this great book, The Dunes, where she helps people walk through the seven principles that she feels that can help with everyone: fear, forgiveness, commitment, trust, perseverance, and two more you're going to learn about. But she's really humble, really great story, really knowledgeable. She was journaling, then got inspiration a year later, put her, quote unquote, she wasn't sure if it was going to be a book, up on Craigslist and asked people to go through the journey. She got such great positive feedback. She said, "This is helping people. I'm going to publish it now." It's just a great story. She has a course now that helps people. A really, really interesting story, and a really interesting person, Erin Wiley Sands. You're going to enjoy the conversation. Her view on discipline is quite unique as well, by the way. Thanks for listening. Hi, I'm Joey Pinz. People ask me, how did I lose 130 pounds? The quick answer is always discipline. I started my business, wasn't paying attention to my health, was eating too much, drinking too much sweets. My daughter was born. Next thing I know, I'm pre diabetic, I have hypertension. I knew something had to change. Discipline. I, like many of you, have faced many challenges in your career, in your family, in your life, in your faith. How did you attack them? How did you approach them? How did you solve them, hopefully? It all had to have some degree of discipline. I'm also asked, how did you found and start a tech business that lasted over 25 years? Discipline. I was committed to it, enjoyed technology, didn't enjoy some aspects of it, but knew it was necessary. Discipline. Our podcast mission: how do we use discipline to better ourselves and society? Join me, please, as I talk to interesting people and discuss how they use discipline in their family, in their passion, in their careers, and how it helped them. Our podcast vision: growth through learning from others. Joey Pin's Discipline Conversations. It'll be light and serious. Join us, please. Thank you for consideration. Erin, thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate your time today.
I am just super excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
So your mantra is, how we can live more and carry less. Let's talk about
Yes.
the first part. Like, are people not living enough? What does live more?
I think that people aren't living enough. I mean, we are all alive, and of course, we've obviously been through something that was traumatic on different levels for everybody, which I'm talking
Hmm.
about the pandemic. But in general, in life, I think that a lot of us are living in the future, waiting for stuff to happen.
Hmm.
Or, kind of living in the past, disappointed about something that didn't happen. And many of us aren't, just kind of existing in the moment and honoring this time and this what we have, which is the present, which that's why they call it the present, because it's a gift.
Hmm.
And just really being present in this moment. And I do it myself, especially with the advent of social media. You're on your phone all the time, you're not really present in the moment, you're not living this, because this is all you get. I mean, you know what I mean, this is it. And so exist in this moment, experience the joy and the pleasure of this moment, and don't disconnect from it.
Yeah, it's very interesting you say that. I talked to somebody yesterday who now lives in Cambodia. They're here. They just lived there the
Wow.
last 6 or 7 years, and they just
Hmm.
said they're able to live their life more presently there. There's just not kind of
Yes.
fast pace. I mean, do you think
Mhm.
our culture here? We're both in the States. Do you think our culture has something to do with that, about us not living enough?
Oh, absolutely. I remember some years ago, I was at my cousin's wedding, and he was sort of the bachelor of the family. So we were all happy that finally he got
Mm.
married. And so we were there, and he's coming down where he's at the top, and his bride is coming down the aisle. And I remember taping it and then trying to get something for my aunt so she could see, because she was sick and couldn't be there. And I was doing so many things, and something, a voice said, "Put your
Mm.
phone down and just be here." Because I thought I was there because I was taping it and wanted to capture the moment. But there's a difference when you put your phone down and actually look at it and
Mm.
experience it. And I thought I was there, but I wasn't until I put the phone down. And then it became something else. Then I was crying and I was really connected to the moment. So I do
Mm.
think that we have a culture that is so fast moving and everyone's on to the next. And there's a 24-hour news cycle and we're constantly inundated with news and information that is hard to be present. You know what I mean? And enjoy life. So it's hard for me too because I'm always on the go, but I make myself stop. I do things that I love, like hiking or outdoors where I don't have my stuff and I can just look at the beauty of the earth or just be in the moment.
Yeah, it's interesting how much more kind of focused I am when I'm kind of forced to be off the grid. Like when I fly, for example, there's no internet
Yeah.
access, you can't see anything, and I just, wow, I'm gonna start journaling. I'm just, wow, just there's some clarity there. And you've really, like you say,
It's
yeah, and
wonderful.
you go off, you take big hikes, and you get yourself off purposely, remove yourself from all the technology, and get clarity that way. It's
Hmm.
very
Hmm.
interesting. I wonder if more. I mean, it's really the old mantra of, hey, just stop and smell the roses, right?
Yes, it is. It really is. All the old sayings are true. And to be in the moment, to honor the day, and because you're never going to get it again, especially in this season. You know what I
Mm,
mean? Because Christmas is coming up. Many of us are gathering with our families. And some people lost a lot of people over the last course of the couple of years. So you realize that each moment is precious. And to just kind of be there, get those hugs in, just
mm.
sit. My mother is in love with Hallmark movies, and so if I've seen one, I've seen a
Oh
million,
my
but she
goodness.
loves it because it's a pleasant escape. And sometimes I just
That
sit,
is
and
true.
even though we're watching something, we're watching it together and we're talking about it on commercials because I know that's what she loves. And so that's a memory I'm making with her, even though we've done it 1,000 times.
Yeah, what an excellent analogy. I belong to some of these clubs, and we had to watch a couple of these Hallmark movies, and you're just kind of shaking your head. And but there's just comfort. You know it's gonna end
Yes,
well. You
you know
know it's
it's
gonna, what's gonna happen. There's no surprises, and it's just very thin characters, thin
Mhm.
character-wise, and,
Right.
but it's very, very comforting. It's very,
It
very.
is. It's an escape. Who doesn't want to live in a Hallmark town? You
That's
know what
right.
I mean?
That's right,
It's
just
an escape with
picturesque.
all of that. Yes, exactly. And people who love Christmas and gather in the town square to sing. I mean, who doesn't love this? Yes. So I love
Absolutely
Hallmark.
true. And,
Mm-hmm.
we were talking before we got on about, my daughter's in your area there in California, and just, as she
Yes.
grows up, and, how you have to really look back and, appreciate what you have now. And then you talk about carry less. Uh, Materialism is a serious issue, even consumerism in our country, right? People just get more
Mhm.
and more stuff, and, we really need it all?
Right, exactly. When I talk about carry less, I talk about it both emotionally and
Mm.
physically because in my course, there's something that I have people do, which is I have them do like a spring cleaning, whether that is
Hmm.
on your computer, because sometimes we get a lot of stuff, but just to
Mm.
clean the space in the area, because it really, I don't know, it just lifts something off of you when you spring clean and get rid of that stuff. And then emotional aspects, a lot of us are carrying hurt and disappointment from the past. So when I
Mm.
talk about carry less, I work with people on trusting their unique journey and
Mm.
just letting stuff go that we can't change anymore because we don't live there. That's the past. And we don't live in the future. We live here in the present. So I work with people on letting them or helping them to let go. And these are things that I teach that I'm still learning myself. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Letting things go, like you were talking about your daughter, she's in a different stage of life now. And she's, spending more time with her friends and less time at home. And you have to trust that process and allow and let go of the little girl you raised and watch the young woman begin to, blossom. And
Mm.
I can imagine that's not easy, but it's a beautiful part of life. And you can't be with this young woman if you're still holding on to the little girl. You know what I mean? You have to appreciate the young woman now.
So true, and so well said, Aaron. And hanging on to those, things in the past is such a deep issue. The regrets. People have these
Yes.
regrets, and what if I did it differently? And there's nothing you can do about that. Just make sure it doesn't happen again.
Yes, that's all you can do. You can't change the past. You can't change what you thought was going to happen, what you hope would happen, what you think should have happened. It didn't
Hmm.
happen. And it's a hard process. But I tell people you have to first accept it and stop ruminating and playing the tape about how you think it should have, what they should
Mm.
have done, how life should have worked out. I have a lot of things how life should have worked out, but it didn't work out that way. And so if I keep staying there, being mad about that, then I can't appreciate what can be and the new things that God can bring now into my life. And so it's not easy, but it's, I think, the only way to be free and the only way to be happy. If you live in the present and let that stuff go and learn the lessons, like you said, and make new choices about the future.
Yeah, it's absolutely true. I can't help but think if the Yankees got one more hit, they would have made the postseason. That's just a joke. But you talk about, your 7 main principles. I mean, these are
Mhm.
really, really, fear, forgiveness, commitment, trust, perseverance, surrender, and of course, gratitude. Gratitude is huge. You do a
Yeah.
great job with your videos up and with your course. I haven't been part of it, I'm sure, but it's great. But I mean, just talk about fear.
Oh man, fear is a huge one. And we start with fear because fear is actually behind a lot of things. Sometimes we don't forgive because of fear. I mean, just fear
Mm,
is a huge one. So we start with just all the misconceptions and things surrounding fear and all the ways that we don't live and fully embrace life because we, are afraid. Sometimes you want to start a business but you're afraid that you won't succeed, so you don't,
mm,
step out and do those things. Or you were in love and you got hurt and then now you're afraid to be vulnerable and trust again. So I definitely start with fear because, like I said, I think it's a cornerstone issue that stems from a lot of different things. And after we go through, I use what I call my IRO method, where I help people
yes.
identify what's holding them back, recognize the root cause, because until you recognize the root of where that belief came from, you
Hmm.
have to pull something out by the root or it will continue to grow. So I help you recognize the root cause and then I give you a challenge to overcome it because I truly believe that we can understand something, in an intellectual way, but until we get out and do an action and make it part of our lifestyle, you don't really overcome it. You need to make an actionable change. And so
Hmm.
when we go through fear, and I call them each of them revelations, the fear revelation, after you identify and recognize, you do a fear challenge, which is to do something that you've always been afraid to do. And I had a woman who was in the program, and she had some wounds in childhood, so we identified what it was and we recognized her root. And so it had stemmed in a way that she was afraid to go outside and do certain things. And so for her fear challenge, because I was working with her one-on-one, I said, well, let's go hiking. And that's nothing for me. I hike every
Yes.
weekend. I'm a part of a hiking group. I'm from the Midwest. I love the outdoors. I just grew up like that. My grandfather, who we call Pop Pop, took us fishing. We were the kids at the lake. So outdoors is, my area. But for her, it was a place of fear. And so we show up on a really hot day, and I picked sort of a mild hike for her. And she came in like a turtleneck. It was like 90 degrees outside. And I was like, okay. I said, you ready to do this? She was like, yeah. And so we started in the hike. And as we were going up, she began to take off layers of clothes, but not because she was hot. When we got to the top, she said she felt like she was being released from certain
Mm,
things, like that God and life was releasing the past. So when we got to the top, she was crying, I'm crying, her hands are in the air. And so what happened is, or what I've noticed is, it's a domino effect. When you conquer one fear, a lot of other things, kind of fall away.
hmm.
And she began to get out more. When I saw her like 4 or 5 months later, she had lost 30 pounds. So that was, she was carrying the
Wow.
weight of the fears of the past with her. And her marriage had gotten better because she was more open to do certain things. And so I just felt really blessed to be a part of her story and that she was able to release her fears that way and then conquer other things.
What a great story. Now, are you a therapist? Are you a coach? Like, what's your actual?
I'm a woman who's been through a lot of things.
Mm,
And so, no, I am not a therapist. I'm not a licensed therapist at all. People call me a coach, and I call myself a journey coach. But
mm.
I don't go under the moniker of life coach. I'm just, like I said, a woman who's been through a lot of things, and I feel like I've learned a lot of lessons. And I think that when you learn things, it's part of our job as humanity and myself as a woman of faith to share what I've learned to help other people's journey. So
Yeah,
That's what I
but
do.
I've yeah, and you're an author, of course, which we'll get to in a moment, and
Yes.
I can't wait to talk about that. But when I talk to some therapists and I talk to some coaches, I ask what the difference is, and they say therapists go back in time and try to correct things. Coaches only
Mm.
look forward and try to move forward. So that's
I
why
guess I
because
do a
you
little
talk
of both.
yeah, yeah, you're a little bit of both. Yeah.
'Cause I
Yeah,
think
that's
you have
kinda
to, you have to deal with the past to move forward, but I am all about the moving forward.
yeah,
So,
very
yeah. So
interesting.
I guess I do a little bit of both. Thank you for letting me know
Yeah,
that.
that's what it just I've learned. Yeah, I guess that's a difference between kind of leadership and management in a business. Management
Mm.
is kind of day to day, get your goals done, get everything done. Leadership is always looking ahead and seeing what the direction of the company is going.
Mhm,
So
mhm,
perhaps that's a
mhm.
and then of course you talk about forgiveness. Boy, there's so many people. I'm an Italian. My father's Italian. Boy, some of those Italians do not forgive. My goodness.
I love your culture. Yeah, forgiveness is huge. And I'm divorced, and so I had to go through my own forgiveness journey. When you
Mm,
love and things don't turn out the way you hoped, and you have feelings like that are not pleasant, we shall say. But
right.
yeah, forgiveness is huge because we think it's something that we're giving the other person, and we're
Hmm.
not. It's something we're doing for ourselves. And
Ah.
yes, it is a benefit to the other person, but when you don't forgive, you're locked in a prison of bitterness and, hate and sometimes shame or whatever the case may be, and you're playing those stories. And I think that it is responsible for sometimes building certain things in your body and affecting your health that can turn to dis-ease. So forgiveness is big, and I say it based on what I already shared, that you cannot change what happened. You cannot make that person do or be, or that situation change it in any way. You have to accept that they hurt you. But
Hmm.
you have to also understand that your power does not exist in the past to change it. Your power exists in the present to overcome it, to make new
Hmm.
choices and to begin again. And you don't serve anybody by being bitter and kind of mad. But what happens is you enact justice when you thrive and you move on in spite of what happened to you. And those are the people you love to meet, the people who are free, who've let stuff go, who are forward moving. And so sometimes it's a process, especially if you've really been hurt, or maybe something egregious happened, like god forbid a murder, something big or
Mm,
huge.
mm,
those are,
mm.
those are a process, and they take time. But other things, you find out you just kind of have to let go. And in my divorce, I realized at first I was so hurt, and I had become attached to the story that I would tell my girlfriends. Girl, he did this and that, and I was
Mm.
reliving that story. And one day, I just, I heard a voice say, "Hey, you're really attached to this story. And who are you outside of this story?" I had become so attached to the pain of what I went through that I
Hmm.
had to really release it. And I realized that I had fear of releasing it because I didn't know who I was without the story that I had been telling about how I gotten hurt. And so when I see that I'm dealing with fear in that way, I'm really quick to say, okay, you really have to release that, and you really need to forgive. And when I forgave, just things got lighter. Doors started opening up, and people,
Right.
I began to experience life better. So I understand you have to go through a journey. When you get hurt, you're not going to forgive that day, but you have to know that one day you do need to set those things aside and not get attached to that story or that scenario or that situation, because whatever it was, it still exists in the past. Whether it happened 5 minutes ago or 5 months ago, it's still the past. And so I had to release it, let it go, forgive, and move on. And I'm so happy that I did that. I'm much happier now.
It's amazing how the principles kinda complement each other,
Yeah. Yes,
forgiveness and there's fear
exactly.
involved. But it's so you talk about revenge, which a lot of people, seek instead of forgiveness, and what
Yes.
is the definition of revenge is like you yourself slowly drinking poison because it only
Yeah.
hurts you. It
Right.
doesn't affect the other person. How about when somebody says to you, "I'll forgive, but I'll never forget?"
Well, I'm
That's
not
not really
asking.
forgiveness.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, and forgive, because another thing with forgiveness, people think that forgiveness means that you're saying what they did is okay. What they
Ah.
did isn't okay. It doesn't mean that you're saying that lie you told or that way you deceived or something is okay. It's not okay. And so I don't call people to forget. I call people to take their hands or off of the person's neck that they want, you know what I mean? Because
Right.
you have to say, yes, that hurt me. No, you shouldn't have done that. But it
Hmm.
did happen. I'm going to let it go. I can't change that. But what I can do is move forward and release that. So I don't focus on forgetting. I focus on moving on and acceptance and letting it go, letting them go, and understanding that a lot of people who hurt us are hurt. You know,
Mm.
you've heard the saying, hurt people hurt people. And
Yeah.
so in my forgiveness journey with my ex-husband or with other people, I realized that people, even though they're doing the best that they can for who they are in that moment, and that who they are in that moment may be immature, who they are in that moment may be selfish, but
Mm.
they acted that way not because of you but because of who they are. And so that kind of usually helps me to forgive too, because I understand that they are, like I said, anything, they're immature or selfish, and so they're not able to be anything more than that in that moment. So why am I holding on to their shortcoming?
Hmm.
Let it go so I can move on and live my life.
It's a very important distinction there, Aaron, because yeah, when I see forgiveness, I think, okay, I'll forgive you for what you did, but you're not really doing that. You're really kind of separating yourself and kind of forgiving yourself for the affecting you. It's not really. It's a very interesting distinction that you make there. I like that.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah, I like that a lot. And then commitment.
That's huge. You do a lot on commitment because, I've been listening to you and
Oh
and
boy.
looking at and hearing the things you talk about. And we're about to approach the new year.
Hmm.
So, a lot of people are about to make a lot of commitments and then break
Yes.
them 2 months later. And so I absolutely go over commitment. And what I've learned about commitment is this: two things where I help people kind of keep their commitments. One is you have to recognize it's a sacrifice.
Hmm.
Don't, sugarcoat it and think, okay, the new year's starting, I'm going to wake up every day at 6:30 in the morning and exercise. Okay, but that's going to be hard. Some mornings you're not going to want to wake up. And
Right.
especially if you're a mom and you're dealing with a husband and kids and all the things that you have to deal with, you have to accept and understand before you make that commitment that it's going to be hard, that it's not going to feel good, and that some days you're just absolutely not going to want to do it. Because if you don't prepare yourself for that, when it happens, you're going to give up. This is too much. This is too hard. Know that going in. It's going to be too much. It's going to be too hard some days. And then the other thing is, I tell people to take it in bite sized chunks. Sometimes we decide, I'm going to work out every day, 7 days a week. No, you're
Right.
not. No, you're not. You're not going to do that. Pick 2 days a week that you can do. And if you can't do an hour, do 15 minutes and then gradually grow. That's how you keep and honor your commitments when you don't take on too much. Because when you do, you get overwhelmed, you stop, and then you get mad at yourself for stopping, and then you blame yourself, and then you start eating and doing the other bad thing more because you feel bad that you didn't honor the commitment or the promise you make to yourself. So that's what I say too: a commitment is a promise we make to ourselves. So honor the promise you make to yourself, but understand that we're all busy. You can't do 7 days a week. Do 2 days a week. Start small and then increase as you learn to balance what this new commitment that you're making to your life. So that's what I teach people about commitment, and it works for me.
Yeah, commitment and yeah, goal setting, very important. And yeah, we are coming
Mhm.
this time of year. I know in business, we talk a lot about goal setting where I don't know the acronym SMART, where it has to be specific, measurable, it's got to be achievable and realistic and timely. Um, did I lose you?
No, I'm still here. Can you hear me?
Oh, okay. Just a little yeah, I can. Just a
Okay.
little choppy.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, so many commitments. January the gym memberships go way up and then they decline in February and March, right?
Right, exactly.
Excuse me.
Exactly. Exactly. And it's like you said, businesses know to
Yeah,
start in
yeah.
small increments and to, progress slowly and steady. And sometimes we just take on too much. We think that we just jump in. And if you are somebody who does that on and off because you're, a physical trainer where you can go 100%, but most of us can't because we're balancing and juggling so many things. So, like I said, don't start at 100, start at 55 and keep 55, and you will feel better about
Mm,
yourself. If you go in and instead of doing an hour of workout that you know that you can't,
yeah.
do 15 minutes and then move into that half an hour and then move into, whatever else. And in terms of, because a lot of people are going to start eating different, and I hope people keep their plan, but try to do it 5 days a week. And then on the weekends, maybe gift yourself a cake and then go back and do 5 days a week. But don't overwhelm yourself with this new thing and then, fail at it and then stop and then get mad at yourself.
Yeah, that kind of FOMO, fear of
Yes.
missing out that, a lot of people are afraid to commit because they're afraid they're missing out. In order for someone to trust others, do they have to trust themselves?
I think so. And you mean in terms of just trust, or you mean in terms of commitment, or both?
No, in terms of trust. I moved to trust. Yeah, that's my
In terms of
segue.
trust, yeah, I think that I was watching this documentary. I'm a huge into documentaries the other day, and I cannot think of the man's name because I'm not great with names, but it was his journey about how he became a kayaker. And he would kayak the rapids and do all of these things. And it was just wonderful. I love, obviously, outdoor documentaries too.
Yeah,
But
yeah, I love the outdoors.
yeah, and he was great. He had become the best, in his generation, in his time. And he went through a battle with cancer, and then he came back to the sport. And when he came back at an older age, he actually accomplished more than he thought he would. And what he had learned was, and he said this, and it really resonated with my spirit. He said, "I surrendered to the flow of life."
Hmm,
And that to me is trusting. It's just trusting and releasing, because we can't control. If we've learned anything over the pandemic, that we
hmm.
can't control everything. And so when he said that, I feel like that's a part of trust, surrendering to the flow of life, surrendering to, if you're a person of faith, that God is working all things together for your good. Just surrender and release. And that involves trusting your journey, your unique journey, and that involves trusting life to bring the things you need and to learn the lessons and to not be mad about it all the time, to learn it and keep moving. You know what I mean? And I guess that's still a part of forgiveness, moving into trust. Like you said, they all
Hmm. Yeah.
eventually are intersectional, but it's about trusting your journey. And even if you're, like you say, in business, trusting that even if you are a baker and there's a baker down the street doing the same cookies as you, that they don't make cookies like you do,
Right.
because you've been uniquely purposed to make cookies the way you do. Or maybe when people walk into your store, they feel something that they didn't feel at another store. You have to trust that the gifts you have are unique and purposeful for your life and what you want to do, and don't compare yourself to other people's time frame and what they're doing. Trust your unique journey and what your gifts and what you've been called to do, or what your dreams are.
So many times in life we're faced with a decision and, you know, science and different formulas may be pointing you a certain direction, but it's just something inside your gut is telling you the opposite,
Yes.
and you surrender yourself to that. You trust yourself. I've got to trust my gut on this because,
Yes,
we're
absolutely.
faced with that quite often. And, uh, yeah, trusting yourself, trusting others is key to that. Perseverance. I mean, it's only a certain limit that you can kind of take at that. When do you know when that's
Right.
enough?
Right, right. Well, I want to also add, in trust. I've been in the entertainment industry
Oh,
for
that's right.
years, on and
Yeah.
off, and I got out of it to write and do this program and do other things. But I had this inclination that it was time to get back into it, that I still had something to offer. And I told a friend, and they were kind of, we all have a friend maybe who's a bit pessimistic, and they were like
Mm,
telling me my age, telling me the roles for women, telling me, and I thought, those are society's statistics, and yes, they may be true, but I feel it, and I trust this feeling that there's still something for me out there. And so I went back out and I got an agent, and a couple months ago I just booked my first horror flick, and I'm,
so
slowly working. But if I had listened to them and decided what society says, or what,
mm,
things seem, or like you say, the science, which are facts,
right.
but I decided there was my truth, there was a truth that was in my heart and in my soul. And so I trusted my truth over the facts or the statistics of what society said could or couldn't happen. So I just wanted to say that about trust.
Hmm.
And about perseverance, that's an interesting one because I think that we're all persevering through things, but I think
Sure.
the best way to persevere is to learn and, like we were talking about, to surrender in the process, because it hurts. There are times that you're persevering through something that is very uncomfortable. I had a 9 to 5 job that I was working that I was persevering because
Yeah.
it was uncomfortable. I didn't like it. It wasn't, and this is back in the day, but it didn't fulfill any of the gifts that I felt like I had been brought to the earth to, it just wasn't me. But at the time, it was a blessing because it paid bills. And so I had to learn to persevere in that and to be excellent at that job while I was in that situation, and trust and believe that there was something after it for me. But if you go through this thing or this journey you're having in a time where you're persevering through something that feels uncomfortable or arduous or hard, if you're reminding yourself every day how awful and horrible this is,
Hmm.
you're not going to persevere through it well. You know what I'm saying? You already know that you don't like it. You already know that it's uncomfortable, but allow yourself to learn the lessons and experience the discomfort, because sometimes God uses that to stretch you and teaches you lessons that you wouldn't have learned outside of that predicament. And persevere and know that you'll come out stronger on the other end.
Yeah, you talk about perseverance as an actress. Some roll calls, some auditions. What were those
Oh my
like?
God. Yeah. The journey of an actress is the journey of rejection, because
Right.
you audition 10 times and 9 people tell you no. And then that one person says, yeah,
Right.
I want you. So you have to not let the rejection define you. When I
Mm.
was younger, it did, because it felt personal. Like, am I
Right.
not good enough? Is there something wrong? But then when you understand that you never know what people are looking for, and if you audition enough and believe in yourself and your talent, then you know that eventually a door is going to open and you have something to offer that show or that production or whatever it is. But you can't define yourself by your situation and your circumstance. You have to define yourself by the truth of who you know you are inherently.
That's a tough, tough business. Yeah. That
Yeah,
is
it
a,
is.
I mean, I do some sales and I may not get a sale, but I don't, I move on to the next. I don't take it
Right.
personally. It's, and I guess you have to kind of surrender to the system.
Yes, you have to surrender. Surrender, as the gentleman said in the documentary, to the flow of life.
Mm.
Surrender the things that you don't have control over and let it go. I remember, I forget, I think it was it Shonda Rhimes wrote a book called The Year of Yes. And I think I've seen other people do a year of yes where they say yes to everything, but it takes their lives in areas and places that they never imagined, because they're
Mm.
just surrendering to the flow. They're surrendering, they're letting go of these things that they thought they could control, and just releasing it and moving on to the next. And so, yeah, that's what surrender is about. When I teach surrender, I have people, like I said, we identify the thing that you've been holding on to. We recognize the root cause, and then there are certain little rituals and things that we do to help you surrender. Sometimes, I mean, it's simple, it's not deep, but writing things on paper, you know what I mean, and making the choice to let it go and releasing that. They're just
Hmm.
different surrender exercises that I help people do that are, I think, monumental, and help you make a stand and say, this is the day that I'm letting this go. This
Hmm.
is the moment that I'm not going to keep holding on to this and carrying this weight that's been holding me down, that I'm going to release it, that I'm going to surrender and move forward.
With all these principles, it occurs to me, Aaron, that there's a fine line. Like, you don't want to surrender too much, and you don't want to surrender too
Oh,
little. And
right.
it's the same thing with all of them, right? You don't want to be
Mhm.
too fearful because then you're never going to leave the house. And then
Right,
again, you don't want to walk around in a park at midnight,
right,
in a
exactly,
city somewhere, And so
exactly.
there's that fine line that you really have to surrender yourself to, perhaps, and just
Mhm, mhm,
knowing what that is. We
mhm.
talk about gratitude. There's just so many cases where, um, I like to play golf, and I was just playing golf, and one of the assistant pros sped by us in a cart, and then one of the golfers collapsed. This gentleman in his 50s just collapsed, and they put him in the cart and they got him over. I mean, this is a younger man. He's in his mid 40s. He was rushed to the hospital. He had like a heart episode. I
Oh
mean,
my gosh.
you just never know when something like this can happen. And
Mhm.
the gratitude for your health, through the safety of your children, through your friends. I mean, can we ever have enough?
Yeah, I totally, wow. That's, is he okay now, the guy?
Yes, yes, I hear he's fine
Okay,
now, but
thank God,
it's
thank
just I
God.
mean, we're just playing golf. My goodness, I've just never seen that happen before, and it's just
Yeah.
gratitude.
Yeah, yeah, that had to be really traumatic for everybody involved, and I'm so happy to hear that he's okay. When I teach on gratitude, I have people write down the things that they are grateful for, because
Hmm,
I think sometimes we're always, like I said, moving forward and talking about the things we want to accomplish. Like, I can't wait till this happens. But what are you grateful for today? Look around and really, and which causes you to be present. What do you take joy in right now? What do you
hmm,
love right today? And so I have people write down, you know, and then I have them do an exercise that if today was the last day that you were going to be on earth, what would you want to do? And who would you want to
wow.
spend it with? And a lot of times we think, oh, I would want to do this and that. But when you really sit and get quiet and think about those things, it's not the things you thought, you know,
Hmm,
like if you, because when I think about if I was to, not be here next week, um, what would I regret? And it wasn't it wouldn't be that I didn't book this movie or I didn't do such and such. When I sat with that, the questions I was asking other people to answer, it was travel. And that
hmm,
surprised me because I've been working as an actress, or hustling to get up, writing a book and doing that. But when it came down to it, the thing that I would regret was that I didn't see more of the world. And I thought, wow. And so when I realized that, I said, okay, it's time to start, traveling, of course, COVID. But still,
hmm.
I realized, I said, okay, well, what can I do in California? Where have I not been here? And so I started, exploring my state more. So I think sometimes we get so caught in the rut and the hustle of life. We think that certain things are important. But like when you have, the instance where you saw a friend almost lose his life, then you go, okay, okay, what's really important here? What really matters here? What do I really need to make me happy, and what have I not been doing, or who have I not been telling, that I love them? All of those things become really clear really fast. And so I help people find those things and kind of hone in on those moments. And then when you find out what that is, now it's time to pursue it. Now it's time to pursue your joy.
Very well said, Aaron. Did you always know you had a book in you?
No. I never knew that. I did not know that at all. Like I said, I was going through some things and I began journaling. And that's how the dunes came to be. I began journaling about what I felt like life and God was teaching me about fear, about forgiveness, about commitment, about trust. And so I didn't think it was a book. I was like, not a book. And about a year after that, I really felt God say, go back to that and expand it and make it a book. And so I did, but
Hmm.
even then, I still wasn't sure that I should get it published, because I was like, well, I don't know that this will help anybody. This may not resonate with anybody. So then something said, put it on Craigslist and get people to read it and ask, can you chronicle their journey on film? And so that's what I did. I put an ad on Craigslist, and I got, like, the people who answered my ad ran the gamut from black, white, male, female, just young, old. And so I followed their journey, and they had really bold transformations. And that's when I said, okay, this could be helpful to people. These principles could be helpful to people. And so that's when I got it published. That's when I moved forward to get it published.
It's such a great story. I remember when I read about that, heard about that was tremendous. And so let's talk about journaling. So before the trauma, you were
Mhm.
never journaling, or were you?
I've always been a writer, and I've always written well and written out thoughts and ideas, but not specifically journaling. And I just began because I was just going through a season where I felt like life and God were teaching me things. And so I just started writing every day what I was learning, and
Wow.
then expanded it into a book.
So you're writing pen to paper. not
Yes.
computer, and
No. Old
it
school.
old school in cursive?
Cursive print, whatever. I'm
Yeah,
just writing,
mix.
just, just
And
thoughts, emotions.
are you narrating or you do you have dialogue? Are you first person narrating this events or are you like what's
It's
the
almost
kind of
like a
process?
diary. I'm just spilling out my feelings onto the page and what I think about things, just kind of unabashed, just saying, "Hey, this happened today, and why did this?" And you know what I think, and just kind of going over feelings and thoughts and ideas. And then it started to get more formal, and then I started writing it in an allegorical form, and it
Mm,
just took on many different dimensions. I didn't even know what was happening, but I just I surrendered. I just went with it. And it became, like I said,
wow.
a book.
And never when you're journaling did you have the intention that somebody will eventually read this or it's for a particular audience? It's purely for
No,
you.
purely for me. Because, I mean, when you journal or when you're writing down your personal private stuff, you don't think anyone's going to read it. You don't want anyone to read it. And
Huh.
so obviously, I didn't put everything in the book, but because some stuff was my personal private. But the I knew I had to share a lot of my life and what I was going through, even the things that were painful, even the things that were embarrassing, even the things that I felt like were failures, because I couldn't ask anybody to look and ask themselves the hard questions if I wasn't willing to do so, as well. And so I share that and I share myself because I'm asking people to take the deep dive into their hearts and look inward and find out their stuff and, examine it and get over it and overcome it. And I can't ask you to do that if I'm not willing to do it with you.
Very interesting. But going back to the journal, you never held anything back there.
No,
Your journal, you just and had it not been for the tragedy that happened there, with the pain you were suffering, you would have not started the journaling.
nope, no. So pain sometimes has purpose. Pain has purpose to take you into a different area of life
Right.
that you had never thought you'd be in. So I've always believed that pain has purpose and that sometimes, the greatest revolutions are born out of, people being uncomfortable or, having going through a hard time. You hear that in musicians, some of the greatest albums we've heard are because musicians were going through, hardship at the time. And so I think
Absolutely.
that people birth beautiful stories in pain. I used to like Richard Pryor, the stand-up comedian, and he would tell stories that were hilarious, but they were
Oh,
often
yeah.
born out of his pain.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
Yeah, very rough child. He was raised in a prostitution home. I mean,
Yeah,
there were
exactly.
the pain that he incredible story there. So I'm just fascinated with this journaling because I want to encourage others to do it.
Oh
And
yeah.
if they don't have pain, perhaps there can be another venue. A
Well,
great quote.
yeah. So I don't want to people think that you only journal when you have pain. Not at
Right.
all. I have a girlfriend who journals all the time. She journals far more than me. She just journals her life. She likes
Wow.
to get the lives and her happenings down on paper so she can go back 2 or 3 years later and pick up the journal from 2016 and say, what was I doing then? What was I
Huh.
thinking? Who was
Huh.
I in this year? So it's not always about pain. Sometimes you're just journaling because you need a place to put all that you're thinking and feeling. You know what I mean?
Outlet.
Sometimes when we store those emotions inside, we need to get it out. And if you don't have a soundboard or somebody to talk to, a lot of times, and things sometimes you don't want to share with people, and they're not just
Mm.
painful, but they could just be personal, and you just want to put it on the page. And so, I absolutely encourage journaling. I think it's a release. It helps you see things. And certain times we're thinking things, but when we get it on paper, we can examine what we were believing in a different way and go, okay, well, maybe that makes sense, or maybe it doesn't. It causes us to re-examine our thoughts. So I absolutely believe people should journal, and not just because of pain. I hope you're not in pain. I hope you
Mm.
journal because you just want to put your thoughts down and express yourself in a different way for yourself.
Yeah, of course, Faulkner, the great quote from Faulkner was, "Don't be a writer, be writing." So just write all
Yes.
the time, and just the
Yes.
process of journaling and your eyes seeing your own words, it kind of you're inputting it twice there. Spoke to a
Hmm.
writer yesterday, and she journaled for a long time. She had some tragedy as well, but there was this particular section of her life that she didn't deal with well, and so she actually burned those pages of the journal, and that was her way of letting it go. She watched it all burn,
Oh,
and she found
yes,
that very
yes.
cathartic because
Mhm.
she had documented everything that happens, and this is the way I'm going to release it. I thought that was a very
That's
kinda
an
neat
exercise of
way
surrender. That's an
of
exercise of
surrender.
surrender that yeah, because she's releasing the past, she's letting it go, and she's releasing it, and she's moving on. So I love that. Yes, yes, yes. I've done that before too. Not, huge, chunks of my life like she did, but just certain things, painful incident, write it down or write a letter of forgiveness, somebody I need to forgive, and burn it and let it go, and, like, to as I move on, I release you. I release you from what happened
Hmm,
to me, and it's gone. Yeah. That's wonderful that she did that. Do you journal?
yeah. I do, but not as much as I should. I've got kind of
Okay.
these things that kind of entice me, ask me some trick questions, and so
Mhm.
I try to, I've been asked to, I'm going to get to discipline in a moment. I talk to everybody, see if they're disciplined, and say, why don't you write something about how you work with it, how others you've talked to work with, and I don't know. So I guess I'm just going to keep journaling and see what inspiration arises, kind of like yourself.
Yes,
Uh,
yes, yes, yes.
yeah, but I do enjoy the process. I do like to write. Not a very good speller. Do you consider yourself a
We've
disciplined
all
person?
gotten bad at spelling too, and I think it's
Yeah,
because we have phones and apparatuses that are
that's
always
right.
correcting our spelling, and so
And
I was like,
grammar.
"I don't even remember how."
That's right.
So because my phone or my computer's always correcting it for
Oh
me.
yeah, yeah,
So, but
yeah,
yeah, I'm like you. I'm old school. Like I said, I write on, pen to paper.
yeah.
I
Me
just
too.
prefer it. But yeah, my spelling's definitely gone downhill over the years.
Yeah, that's why I'm bad at crossword puzzles because of my spelling is so poor. Uh, so your journaling, your book is released. This whole process of being an author, by doing your courses, by being an actor, do you consider yourself a disciplined person?
I consider myself very disciplined, but not all the time. And
Mm,
like when I give myself a break, like right now in this season, I'm having fun. I'm eating cookies and
yeah, me too. Me too.
I'm
Can't
just
help it.
enjoying myself because I knew it was coming and I said, I'm not working out. I'm not doing the things that I know to do, which, are healthy and better for me. But I'm giving myself some grace and allowing myself to enjoy the season and have a little fun. But come January 5th, because that's my day, I'm going to do a 60-day vegan journey. And
Oh,
I've never done that before. And so I've been doing a lot of research and looking up things and kind of preparing myself to get ready. But I know that once January 5th happens, that when I'm disciplined, I do follow through. And I think
wow.
that's because as a young woman or as a young girl, my mother put me in sports. So I have a background in gymnastics and dance. So I learned discipline and the benefits of it at an early age. I learned what it is to, practice something and do something and be committed to it and get a result after, a certain amount of time. So yeah, I do consider myself disciplined, but I allow myself to have fun.
It's interesting. Your principles all require a certain element of discipline.
Hmm. Hmm.
To overcome fear, forgiveness, commitment, you have to, you know, you know, surrender yourself to the process and be strict about it in some areas. But yeah, like I am disciplined in some areas, but other areas I am not. And
Yeah.
you can't. And I get a decent amount of pushback, Aaron. Like I get people saying, you don't need discipline, you need compassion and love. And I said, well, don't you still need a little bit of this? Let's talk about, so I
Yes.
get a
I
decent
think
amount of
we need all
pushback.
of them. You have to have discipline. Discipline has to be the cornerstone of everything. The people who answered my Craigslist and or
Mm,
Craigslist ad and did the made the decision, they had discipline because they made the decision that they were going to take the journey. I think that I wrote a good book, but if you can read it and it won't change your life if you're not disciplined and make the decision that you're ready to change. They had all made the decision that requires discipline because then you have to do the things to change. Nothing
mm.
happens without adults making the decision and putting the time and effort. So it took discipline to forgive, like you said, because you had to do the work in your heart to do those things. I don't think that we can accomplish really much of anything without discipline, but you should also bring compassion along with your discipline, depending
Exactly.
on, the area of life that you're, dealing with at the moment.
Yeah, I'm certainly not suggesting that all you need is discipline. I'm just saying it's an
Right.
element in the salad, and, yeah,
Yes.
I like what you just said right there, but, having a goal without a plan is really a hallucination. Now somebody said
Yeah.
that, I not me, that's somebody else's quote, but, um, so Erin, how do you measure success?
Hmm. Now that I'm older, now that I'm a woman of a certain age, I measure it in joy and
Mm,
fulfillment. When I was younger, it meant, accomplishment. What had I
mm,
done? And so, and that, we all go through different phases and different, places of growth in our life. So now that I'm older, I realize I can accomplish things and still not feel joy. And so that doesn't, I don't feel too much success if you have the things, but not the love and the joy and the fulfillment. And if you don't love what you're doing, then to me, for me, that's not success. So success
mm.
now absolutely includes accomplishment, but am I accomplishing things that I love? Am I enjoying the process? Am I enjoying the journey? Am I surrounded by people and things that bring me joy and happiness? And so that's success to me now.
Hmm. Very well said, Aaron. Very well said. So, Aaron Wiley Sands, how can we get in touch with you? How can we get the Dunes, the great book that we discussed, and your
Awesome.
principles? Really enjoyed your time today. Please tell us.
Well, I'm just so glad we were able to connect and have this talk, and I think you are so awesome. People can get in touch with me or find out about the course, which is Live More, Carry Less. Just go to livemorecarryless.com. And the book, The Dunes, is available in audiobook on audio.com, or what's it, it's acx.com, I believe, and it's available as an ebook wherever ebooks are sold, and it's available in paperback on Amazon. But you can go to the dunesbook.com and find out about all the places it's available. So the dunesbook.com and livemorecarryless.com.
Very good. And of course, there's a big Hollywood movie, The Dune, that was released, and there's lots of carryover. But this is Dunes,
Yes,
Dunes, the
yes,
Dunes.
yes, yes,
Yes,
you're right.
very
Yes,
very big difference
yes.
there. Aaron, thank you so much for your time today. I wish you
Thank
well.
you.
When I visit my daughter, perhaps we'll get together and have a cup of coffee.
Yes, I would love that. Yes, absolutely. Reach out.
You be well, and I'll talk to you soon.
You too. Bye bye.
Thank you for listening and or viewing Joey Pin's Discipline Conversations. Please share this episode with one or two of your friends who you think may benefit from the episode. Our website, www.joeypins.com. There you'll find lots of resources and you could join our mailing list. Please follow us on all our social media, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Podcast information, the video version of our podcast is on YouTube. Please subscribe. Audio is on all major podcasting platforms. Please follow them. And if you like it, please consider giving 5-star rating. Would really appreciate that. Would you like to financially support the podcast? You can go to our Patreon site. Consider 5, 10, or $20 a month. There's all kind of plans that we have there. There's like a one-time payment. What is this podcast episode worth to you? $25, $50, $100, $500, $1,000, $5,000. You be the judge. You can go to our PayPal account to do that as well. Thank you again for listening or watching Joey Pin's Discipline Conversations.